Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we're joined by Colin Murphy. Colin is currently the director of recruiting at Method, and yeah, we're happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Very honored. Thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you. So, Colin, let's get started with your background. We'd love to learn more about you. You grew up in Manhattan, right?
Yeah, that's right. I grew up on the Upper East Side. I'm a born and bred New Yorker. So, yeah, I've been here basically my whole life except for college and a couple of years after.
Nice, cool. So, what
Yeah.
what was it like growing up in Upper East Side?
Yeah. No, it's funny. I get that question a lot, and it was just what my life was, right? Like you don't think anything of it when you're growing up, but I look back on it very fondly, and I'm very proud to be in New York. I am a very proud New Yorker. So, but the living situation was interesting. I lived in a rent controlled apartment. I was the fourth generation to grow up in this apartment. It's a one bedroom. I shared it with my brother, my parents, and I think it's a very formative experience. Like setting was actually quite formative for my life, growing up because I shared a 50 square foot bedroom with my brother. My brother was 6.5 years older than I am, and it was a 6 by 9 bedroom that was carved out of my parents' bedroom. So it was like semi-legal. We got attempted evicted many attempted evictions for lots of like this living arrangement we had. But the kind of hallmark story of that time is my brother was taller than the room was wide, and so he like never was able to like lay down flat for like most of our childhood. So yeah, look, it was
Wow.
very. I think it's the first inkling of like kind of a growing up in a resilient type of living situation.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
But you said also like your folks had a place out on Long Island as well that you
yeah.
guys
So
would go
it's
to in
kind
the
of a
summer.
tale of yeah. It's right. It's like kind of a tale of two cities, right? Like I think, and we'll kind of cover this as throughout as well. But I think my early life until now is kind of a tale of two cities of both resilient situations and an immense privilege. So my parents had a place out in Long Island that we'd spend summers, and I and so we that was the choice that they made. It was either upgrade to a nicer place in Manhattan or kind of live in this shoebox apartment that was basically dirt cheap and have a second place to escape to on weekends, and they chose the latter.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
actually, that
yeah,
makes a lot of sense because
yeah,
you said you were like fourth generation to grow up in that apartment, right?
yeah. That's right. My father was born in the apartment in the 40s. And I know that his grandmother was living in the apartment as well. So I think, yeah, so it's been in the family since at least the 30s, is to my understanding.
That's
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
That's really cool. Do you guys still have it?
We just gave it up recently.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of, there's a lot of nuance to that type of living situation, but my mom was living there. My mom's is sick, so she's not living there currently.
Mm.
And there's a lot of rules and laws around rent control departments. So there's a whole story
There's a
behind
whole
that
story
for
there.
maybe another podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
But you said both of your parents were also they were entrepreneurs. So that must have been an
Yeah.
interesting life experience growing up with two entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Yeah. So my dad ran an architectural sales firm. He basically represented some Canadian companies for very niche architectural products, like moldings and ceilings, and like they did very niche like crown molds and little features that you'd see in architectural products. So he was just
That's
like
cool.
kind of a classic BSer New Yorker that you'd expect with a thick New York accent. Uh, hitting the phones, selling these like niche architectural products. And my mom started a fine linen business in the late 80s
Mm.
and kind of grew a brand underneath her name. So she very, very rare is maybe the wrong term, but definitely a headstrong lady to build her own business in the 80s, and kind of grow it throughout the 90s and early 2000s. She would be a home on the later side for sure. Like her business was definitely one of her kids as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Do you feel like
Yeah,
your parents being entrepreneurs has anything to do with you working in a startup environment at this point in your career?
I think so. I think, yeah, for sure. I've only ever worked at smaller companies. I think I've always had an orientation for that. I really like the size. I know how much my parents loved the entrepreneurial gene, and I saw how much value it brought them. I don't know if I could ever go the founder route the way that, not that they were like tech founders the way that we would like think about founders today per se, at least in our space.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there is a kind of a romantic aspect to starting your own company and being your own boss, which I reached the cutting edge of it by trying to balance practical, making a living, and being a little bit lower risk than they were willing to take.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's
Yeah,
yeah, particularly in our space, right? Like in tech,
yeah, yeah,
it's a lot.
yeah, yeah,
It's a lot for
yeah.
sure.
Sure is.
Yeah. So you also you were growing up, you got into competitive sailing, right?
Yeah. So basically, the place my parents had in Long Island was near a local club. My dad sailed on weekends, in this kind of local circuit, and it got me. There was a little, summer camp sailing program there that got me into it, and I ended up being pretty good. And it snowballed there into joining this kind of regional team that was really well regarded, and again ended up being kind of pretty good. And so very lucky that my mom especially like really heavily endorsed this hobby and passion. And most weekends throughout the year, even like during the school year, I would be training on weekends with this regional team, and performed well enough to sail at these events all over the world as part of like a kind of a junior team USA. And that continued through my teens, and it kind of stopped at, college is a natural break point for it typically. But yeah, it was, for a time, as you graduate between different types of boat classes, in the earlier stage I was sailing in like South America and Europe, and graduated into this another boat class that was with a teammate. It's two people in a boat, and for about a year, 2 years, we won basically every event
Was that
in the
that in
US.
college or was that
Prior,
still?
right before college. Yeah, right
Oh,
prior
that's
to
awesome.
college. Yeah. So this guy and I were the top sailor in the US for probably like a year and a half, 2 years. He went on to go to Yale and win basically the Heisman of sailing 2 times, which is a very like rare occurrence in the sailing world. So yeah, it was a blast, and just it was very cool to be brought all over the world for these types of events.
Oh, that's incredible. That's
Yeah.
like it's a really incredible experience. And so
Yeah.
that's what you and you were sailing. So the success you had in like the high school years sailing is what set you up to be able to be recruited by Dartmouth
Yeah,
to
that's
sail
right.
for
So I
them.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. I got recruited for Dartmouth. Um, they had a couple spots on the team. I had actually this. I mean, as you can imagine, the sailing community is super duper small. I
Hmm.
actually, I sailed with the coach's younger brother. We were close friends, and he had actually coached me at many events in the past. So there is a it's because it's such a small community, you kind of get to know everybody.
Mm.
And that was always my dream school. And yeah, I was lucky enough to be recruited to Dartmouth. That's right.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So is like so with sailing, is it like a pretty straightforward race? Like whoever gets to
Yeah.
the finish line, or how does
Yeah.
it work exactly? Like what's
Yeah.
the setup?
How much time do you have? Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
it's not the most it's becoming bigger with all this. There's this thing called CLGP, and there's like the America's Cup, and those boats are like super cool nowadays with they like fly out of the water or whatever.
Nice.
Um, but the typical format is you do a couple races a day on a kind of closed circuit. So when I went to a regatta in like Turkey or something, I wasn't sailing to Turkey. Like you'd go and there's like these little boats that you rent, and you're like sailing in a closed circuit, kind of inland. There's a whole other breed called offshore racing. That's not what I was doing. So yeah, but multiple races in a day in this kind of closed, you go around a course situation.
Okay, so like how much distance are we talking for
Not much. Like a whole end-to-end race might be like a mile or two.
really?
I don't really have a concept of it, but they'd be like
Okay.
30 to 45 minute, maybe an hour long races.
30 to 45 minutes. So I guess like well, I guess it depends on how like the windy
If it depends on the way, yeah, it depends how
or
windy it is too. Yeah.
yeah. So how fast
Yeah.
are you going? So it's not it sounds like probably on some of these smaller circuits not too fast
Not super
or
fast. There's different boat, there's a number of different classes of boats. Like in the Olympics, I think there's 12 classes or maybe 10. And they're not like some of them are much higher performance boats. I was in a boat called a 420. And then if you go to the Olympic route, which many people in this sport do because it's such a small community, There's one called a 470, which is the closest proxy for 420, but it's just like a double-handed, has a mainsail, jib, has a spinnaker, not to get super jargony, but not that fast. Like not at probably like jogging speed, maybe a little faster when it's windy.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So what goes into making somebody great at this sport? Is it like super
Yeah.
athletic? Is it more strategy? Is it like
It's that
what?
that's the interesting thing. Sorry, not to cut you. It's
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
there's I think this applies to many competitive and even professional applications, right? Where there's a concept of strategy and there's a concept of tactics.
Mm.
And then within sailing, there's you also have the conditions, and then you have what you can control, which is your boat, right? So, you know, how well you can optimize the parts that are in your control, and then how well you can predict what might happen with the course. So the tactics are, what do I do relative to the people around me? And how do I kind of manage the area, my local area? And then strategies like, well, what's the tide? What's the wind? Like what keep your head out of the boat and look around and see like where you think the wind's going to be, later or like down the line, or how do you put yourself in the position to get to that first, right? So there's like, not to unpack the whole sport, but
I
it's
mean, I would love
yeah,
to hear
yeah,
more, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
super interesting, man. So
yeah.
like,
So, I think the answer to your question is ultimately ours. There is a bit of conditioning. If there's no wind, it's not highlighting the conditioning aspect of your of the or the physical aspect of racing. But when it's really windy, it is certainly a very physical sport. Um, but the strategy part just comes down to hours on the water and reps. Like there's all these little hand movements to make your boat go faster, and you need to like have that dialed in, and that's going to take hours. But all the strategic stuff, like how to evaluate the course itself over time, is just, I think it's just an hours thing.
so how do you predict like which direction the wind's gonna be going and stuff like that? I mean, like,
Yeah,
th-
it's yeah, and this is a little bit of the nuance. There are patterns, right? And there are many times where you could just get unlucky, and that just happens. Like wind shuts off, shifts totally different direction.
well,
Everyone on that
wouldn't that
side,
apply to like all the boats or no? Because you're like
yeah.
like unless they're
Think
not.
about maybe you're separated by a quarter mile of distance, right? If
Oh, okay. So you're separated by like you're not like.
Yeah, because when you after you start, you already start on a pretty long line,
Hmm.
and so I'm trying to make a comparison. Um, I can't think of one that comes to mind immediately, but
Yeah, yeah.
say the line is like a football field length. The conditions on one end, if there's like a slight angular shift of the wind on one end of it, that's going to be a meaningful difference at the scale of a football field or two football field of distance,
Mm.
right? So that's how do you put yourself in the position to take advantage of that slight shift? And then how do you triage when you make mistakes or you're not in the right position to not have that be as punishing of an outcome? Is
Why do they separate the boats by like that much? I mean, obviously they don't want the boats to hit each other. I
Yeah,
guess.
there is a physical limit to like how close. Yeah, right. So these races that we'd have, there'd be like 60, 70 boats on a line. So these boats are like
Oh,
15 feet long. Yeah, yeah. So they're
wow.
um in college it's different. In college you get 18 boats on a line, and they're much shorter, much smaller races, like they're 20, 15 to 20-minute races. The junior sailing stuff, you get like 60, 70 boats on a line. It's naturally going to be pretty big distance in between.
Wow, that's incredible. So it
Yeah.
sounds like it's like a very much a strategy based sport.
Yeah. I'd say again, there's what you can control in the boat to make it go faster, and how to control the boats around you. And then there's the definitely a big strategic component
Do you
for
feel like is it some
evaluating.
of it like intuition or just like feel like just based on experience you just sort of get a sense for it, or is it all just like very kind of like a formula? Uh, you see what I'm saying? Because I almost feel
Yeah,
like
I
there's yeah.
totally. There are some people who are like they were just they had the intuition. Some people were just better, man. They had the intuition. They knew how to make the boat go like if your boat's going slightly faster over a 50-minute race, think about a Formula One. If you get zero point 0.1 seconds per lap faster, that's 5, 6 seconds faster throughout a whole race, which is a meaningful amount of time. Same idea. It's like the exponential buildup of being slightly faster over a whole race is a huge difference. So some people were just really good at making the boat go fast. Some people just had a sixth sense also for the conditions on the course and were like always found a way to be in the right place at the right time. And so, which is all to say that there is a formula to it, and some people are better at cracking it than others.
Yeah. Well, that's like it's kind of interesting when you think about like even success in startups.
Hmm.
It's like while like having that edge of like that fraction of a second is the difference between first place
For
and
sure.
second place, and is the difference between like the multi millions or billion-dollar
Yep.
valuation and like not having that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of great
And
when you're
look,
yeah,
and there's always a tremendous amount of luck involved too. I mean,
yeah,
the best person, the best sailor doesn't win every weekend, but the best sailor is typically in the top 5 to 10 throughout the year at most events, right? So it's
yeah,
there's kind of a golf comparison here too. I think there's a lot less luck in golf than there might be in sailing, but
sure.
nonetheless, like, you know, Scotty Scheffler isn't winning every single weekend, but he's typically in the top 10 every weekend. And that
Right.
just over time, you're just going to get, you're increasing your surface area of potential wins over that time.
Right, right. It's like looking more holistically over several
Yeah.
events. Yeah. Well, that's really cool. And so when then you were going out of college, you decided you were traveling a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
right? For a few years,
Yeah.
which is really cool. It sounds like you were sort of like working, I don't know if it was
Yeah.
like
Well,
part-time, but it was like just sort of like very flexible and you were focusing on just traveling, seeing the world.
yeah. I think I've always been a bit of what's the word? Contrarian. And as you can imagine, some of my friends from school were going like predestined for the iBanking and consulting route. And I didn't even know about iBanking or CS until like my senior year. I was like, whoa, everyone got these like big jobs, Goldman Sachs or whatever. I had not really been paying attention to it. I'd always known I wanted to do my own contrarian thing, whatever that would be. This opportunity sort of fell into my lap to half play, half work for my first job out of school, where I was looking at investment opportunities in the high-end chocolate industry, super niche, and basically evaluating the supply chain to see if there was any place that would make sense to, uh, and open a business, start a business, improve efficiency, whatever it might be. And so it was more of a research job to just analyze what the state of the market looked like. But it brought me all over the world. I spent time in Africa. Living a lot of my time in Brazil. So a very nomadic, very cool first job out of school. That did scratch the contrarian itch that I was searching for.
Yeah, that's definitely I've never met somebody in that
Yeah,
industry, so that's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so so what part of Brazil were you living in?
There's a state. It's kind of the most, Brazil juts out into the Atlantic Ocean. The most eastern state, furthest east, is a state called Bahia. There's 98% of this rainforest has now been um what's the word? Dewooded or
Yeah,
God, what's the word I'm looking
deforestation.
for?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Deforested, yeah.
yeah.
Deforested. And so there's 2% remaining, and there's all this ancient cacao
You
that
said
lives there.
2%?
Yeah, it's super
That's
sad.
so sad, man.
Super sad. So in some of the remaining native primary Atlantic rainforest, there's like all this like ancient cacao growth there. So there was a farm that I was living on, and I was like kind of part of the job was like evaluating the state of this particular farm to see if there was any like possible yield or any changes we could make in order to yield um, a higher quality cacao product out of it. And so I was primarily living there for a lot of this trip, but then or this job, the kind of mandate snowballed into looking at the entire supply chain from end to end, so from farm to kind of bar that you would buy at the store. So it brought me to a lot of other places in the world, like DR, parts of Africa, Haiti.
Yeah.
It was cool. It was super cool.
What was the culture like in Brazil where you were?
Um,
Yeah, it's like people in
yeah,
general.
yeah, super. I mean, having had this travel experience, I think the sentiment is consistent across all these places I've traveled. Is like everyone is just so welcoming. And I think it was such a personal unlock that you have these conceptions of like what a place might be, and everyone is just so nice and accommodating wherever you go and so hospitable. And I think the learning and takeaway is that wherever you go is everyone there. It's mostly just filled with people just trying to live their life as normal and just be nice, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's that experience. It's not just a Brazil specific answer, but that experience has really transcended like how I my outlook on life of uh, perceptions you might have about a place. But it's like if you think about it, people just live there full time all the time normally. It's not this like conception that people might have on the day to day.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. Like I've traveled a lot and it's definitely opened my eyes. But I also think it's like I try to sometimes see like where I live in Northern Virginia, DC area as like through a tourist eyes, like
Yeah,
almost like through a fresh lens. Like I wonder what like the perception is of like people who live from, people visiting like on what they think
yeah,
about us, right? Like
yeah, right,
they must find it like so crazy that we're like I'm in, like essentially the capital of like the United States, right?
right, right.
It must be kind of wild to kind of think about, but yeah, it's that's really cool. And you were bouncing like so you were primarily staying in hostels, but then you told me you ended up living in a steakhouse.
Yeah, I became
That's
friends with
great.
I became friends with the with this guy who's a close friend of mine now whose family owns a Brazilian steakhouse. And true to what I was just saying now, the friendliest guy in the world. He's like, why are you living in these hostels? Why don't you just come stay with me? And that was basically my semi-permanent home base in Brazil for like almost a year, where I was just living rent
Yeah, but
free in this guy's steakhouse. I wasn't He was
yeah, but like
covering all my meals. Yeah.
so you didn't have like a bedroom though, right? Like where were you? I mean,
They had a spare bed. It was, cot in a room, but
yeah, it was
uh
just like in a back room, just a random
yeah,
back room.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so like I said, so hospitable, and he refused any rent or he treated us to every meal because we're living in his restaurant, and it was like,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, it was wild. It was super wild. Super, yeah,
That's
nothing
so
more to
cool.
say, right? It's so nice.
I think when I was can't remember, like maybe around 20, I was living in a boxing gym.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because I used to like
Yeah.
coach boxing, Muay Thai, MMA, and
And it's just
it
easier
was
to not
great.
could and stay there.
I was also broke, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like a
yeah.
kid,
That's great.
But yeah, it was I know though, like I could have paid for a place. I think it was
Yeah,
also just like I was like 19, 20. I was like, why am I gonna?
yeah.
I'll just
But
like sleep here.
these are the formidable experience. I still wish I could do things like that. I think my life, life gets to a place where it's not cool anymore either. But I do
Yeah,
look back on those with nostalgia of like really pushing it at the time.
yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, like I think back to where I was traveling kind of like in a nomadic, similar-ish situation in my early 20s, and like it was awesome, but it now sort of would also seem a little exhausting. But maybe
Yeah.
that's also because like you get to a certain place in your life where your career is so demanding and you have kids and like that kind of thing, where it's like the
Hmm.
idea of having the energy to doing all that. Like I think our lives probably require just as much energy today, if not even like more
Yeah.
work. But yeah, just the idea of like bouncing around all the time is just like no, 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 no.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
I,
can't
I I also think that we fall into a bit of a rat race, right? Where there is a pressure,
for
and
sure.
I think that's the same pressure I rejected post school, right?
Yeah,
Uh, it's, they say, there's the what you're supposed to do, which is get the good job, work really hard, climb up the ladder. What are the ladder ends is like very vague and open-ended, and uh, kind of follow this template and process. And I do, one day hope to be able to break the cycle, but currently, I think, like you said, having a kid and being in your 30s and kind of at this interesting nexus of our career, it's like, okay, let's work hard and see where this brings us. Uh, Unfortunately, we do need money to live, and that's so that is the friction that like lets us not be romantic about living on the road and living this kind of more contrarian
yeah,
type of life.
yeah, yeah. It gets a little hard when you have kids.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Just a little. Yeah,
Yeah, I even though I try to convince my wife, but she's not having any of it.
yeah, yeah. So then you moved to Africa. Where were you living in Africa?
That was really truly nomadic. So that
Yeah,
was part of this project. I took some time off, had the opportunity to like volunteer on this game reserve in South Africa, which was
nice.
super cool.
Yeah, that
Man,
sounds pretty freaking
that's a
awesome.
absolute highlight experience of my life. And there's a, I can,
So how
again, I
did
have
you
a
land
whole,
that? Like how did that even come together for you?
yeah, by virtue of the cacao thing, it's kind of in the world of sustainability and reforestation and adjacent to conservation. And so part of the context from that job was also involved in this NGO called Africa Parks,
Hmm.
which basically takes donor money and then invests in national parks in Africa. And it basically approaches these governments that don't have the resource to take care of these parks and says, hey, like we will come and run the park and we will fund it and we will rewild it and we will run this whole conservation effort and community effort. So they do tons of really cool things like translocate animals from one park to another because this one's overpopulated with rhinos or whatever, and they'll bring rhinos to a different park to reintroduce the nativity of like the original park wherever that country might be. So they have the whole. Hopefully, I'm not butchering this, and Africa Parks listens, and they're like, "No, you completely blew the pitch." But
No.
they have a whole portfolio of parks, all across Africa. And I was working on one adjacent kind of part that's involved with this NGO. So I got the opportunity to live at the park for a few weeks and did some manual labor. I was like poisoning fence lines and
So yeah,
cutting
tell me about
weeds
that. So
and
you're
yeah.
poisoning fence lines. So like what for? Like what was that like?
So that, yeah, I don't really know. Like I was
You were
there
just like, I
to
was just there. I was just trying to
I was
help
there to
out.
do manual labor. Yeah, they're
Right.
like
Yeah.
they're just like here's the task list for the day. Here's a bucket of poison. Here's a Land Rover. You're gonna go to here's the map. Go to this fence and drive along the fence line and spray that whatever with like this poison. And that was like what a task could look like. Or there was there's an invasive species of some sort of plant that's in the middle of the prairie, and you'd like drive out to it and take a weed whacker and just weed whack it. And like meanwhile, like giraffes and elephants and like rhinos are kind of like walking by in the distance. It's like
That is
super,
freaking
super,
awesome.
super, super cool. So it's
How come you
really
didn't stay
wild.
longer? You just like you had to move on or
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. There, I guess I asked myself the same thing. Why didn't I had another trip lined up, or I had another adventure, I should say, lined up, which was I've always wanted to do this kind of solo road trip. So I bought this 50cc scooter named Daisy. It had a little tag name on it called Daisy from a guy in Joburg. And I drove this 50cc scooter along the coast over a month, stopping at all these like there's a very robust hostel infrastructure in South Africa. And so I had the map, and like every day I tried to make it to the next hostel on this list. But every day the scooter would break down because it's a 50cc scooter not meant to travel more than like 5 kilometers at a time. But the interesting thing about this experience was I really never waited more than 5 minutes after my scooter broke down before someone would pull over with a pickup truck and say like, what are you doing here? You have to come with me. Like I'm you're insane. You're coming with me, and we're going. uh, and so out of the kindness of people's hearts, they would just pick me up, drop me off at a mechanic, and say, "Hey, you're staying with me tonight while we get this fixed up." And I stayed with a bunch of strangers who like opened their homes to me during this trip. Very reckless. I don't think I would do it again, but
right.
I did have to sell the scooter halfway through this trip because it was so unreliable. But I ended up hitching a ride the rest of the way through just people I met. It was
Oh, that's freaking
super
awesome.
cool experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you ended up in was it Cape Town?
Yeah, so there was a
Yeah.
trip from Joburg to Cape Town, which is like
Yeah.
roughly a New York to Miami length trip.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you were trying to do that whole thing on a scooter.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. The guy who sold it to me said it was totally doable. And
That's an insanely long trip.
I just took his word for it. Yeah, it was supposed to take a month. I mean, it did take a month.
How many times did
So
your scooter break down?
I think something along the lines of like 6 or 7 times, and and then I just sold it. I sold it in one of the cities I was in after that,
Yeah.
and I just hitched the rest of the way.
That's wild, man. So
Yeah,
like you were doing like on the scooter on the side of the road, like on the
yeah,
side of the highway essentially?
yeah, full on, full on.
Were other people doing that or was it like just you?
No,
Just
no,
like
people were on proper motorcycles, but not out.
you're just
Definitely no
out
one
there
was
on a
doing this.
scooter
Yeah,
driving like trying to go like 1,000 miles.
yeah, yeah. I mean, my goal, I never wanted to do more than like 100 miles in a day, but
God, man,
because
that's wild.
there's a good infrastructure for it.
Oh, for
to
like this like a side of the road, like you're not just on like a
no, no,
really.
no. No, no, not the side of the road. No, for where I would try to make each night. So
Oh,
like
okay, yeah,
the, if you had a reliable bike, this is totally doable. But I
yeah,
just my mistake was the reliability of my vehicle. And
yeah, oh, yeah,
that was the issue. But the if you had a proper motorcycle, totally doable trip.
yeah. That's awesome. I'm also looking up a 50cc scooter so I can like envision
I
like
can
what
pull up a
you're.
picture.
Yeah, can you pull up a picture?
Yeah. Yeah, here. I mean, this is gonna be a little janky, but oh, sorry, it's
Oh,
blurry.
it's not going in.
Here,
Oh, wow, that's
you can see
awesome.
the and then I think there's
So that's
me
you?
in the
That's like
back.
actually you?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oop, that's another busted scooter.
Yeah,
Hold on,
I
there's
was
me
like,
in
I
the
hope
back
it's
of a
not that
truck.
one. Yeah,
This is me in the back of a truck because of course I was in the back of a truck because someone was picking me up.
yeah, of course. Yeah, do what you got to do. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
What a good
Yeah.
experience. It was-
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I mean, it's super duper reckless. I would never do that again, but
Yeah, well, you got to do some reckless stuff.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I have some stories. Like one of my favorite, like insanely reckless stories was like early days of Secure Vision. Like at first, it wasn't a scale company. Secure Vision is my embedded recruiting RPO firm.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and in the early days, I just had a few customers. I was working with Grubhub, recruiting for them.
Yep.
WeWork at the time was growing
Yeah.
insanely
I
fast.
used
We
to
were one
work
of,
at WeWork. Yeah, I got
oh
it.
yeah, really? Oh, so
Uh,
we were on their preferred vendors list. So I worked with Nick Warswick,
oh,
the chief
I
growth.
was at a subsidiary. I was called Managed by Q.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
they acquired them. I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
that acquisition. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I did a lot of work with them and Similar Web. I don't know if you remember. So it's a Israeli startup that scaled like super fast and I think IPO'd recently or more recently.
Mm,
But um yeah, so anyways, I had a few customers, but it was like more of a lifestyle business.
yeah.
And like I think actually this was before WeWork and Similar Web. So this was still Grubhub, like very early days. I think it was like our first year in business. Yeah, it was. It must have been because like there was like things really started to take off with like WeWork and some of these other companies. Like we were hiring a lot, but when it was just Grubhub, I remember there was this like we used to be a contingent firm, so it was like very fee based.
Yeah.
So we didn't actually like make money unless we made a hire. And I think like the first year we ended up pulling in like $77,000 or something. And
Yeah.
like, but there
Yeah.
was like a couple of times where like uh, my girlfriend at the time and I like we ran out of cash. And I remember there was one time where we like basically ran out of cash. We had like a little bit of money left. And so we're like, well, what are we gonna do? And there was a big party happening. Like we were in Romania at the time, random. We were at
Yeah.
Romania at the time, and there was like a big party on the Black Sea in a town called
Okay.
Cosenza. It's like a multi-day kind of like, I don't know, party, like I don't know, like
You have to
EDM
go,
type
of
of stuff.
course. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're like, well, let's just go, and then we'll we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So we basically had like zero, like close to nothing in the bank account, and we
Yeah.
just ended up going to this like big party on the Black Sea. And just like looking back on it, like that's so insane.
Yeah.
It's
But
so
people
insane to
are
be just like,
resilient.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're just like,
It's
yeah, we'll figure it out.
it's gonna work out. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and it
that's
did.
it does. And it always I shouldn't say it always does, but more often
No.
than not it does, right?
Well, I
And
mean,
it
like you have to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
you just you have to. So it'll happen. Right? Like
Yeah.
you'll survive. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And I think that's what this, similar, right? That to your experience, right? I think putting yourself in these situations is really foundational experience. I think it's
Yeah.
man, I think it's easy to look back and say how cool and fun that experience was, but my God, it was like very challenging as well,
Oh
right?
yeah.
You're
Yeah.
stuck
We
on the
also
side of the
like
road and you're hoping that someone's going to save you, basically. And luckily someone does. But the takeaway is being how important those challenging experiences are to to create being resilient, right?
yeah. It's funny, like it's like when we're younger in some ways, it's like we put ourselves in those situations, and then like when we're our age, we're like, we don't need like we already have enough.
Yeah,
Like we don't like, we don't need yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
100%. Although
life just
I
starts
do
to
yearn for it. I do yearn for it a little bit, but not
I do
maybe
too.
not to that extreme. But I do yearn
No.
for
No,
being
but
challenged in kind of novel ways.
I definitely want to like get back to traveling more overseas. Like
Yeah,
I really do miss it. In the past several years, I just really haven't. Like post COVID, maybe like once. went overseas, and it definitely feels like it's kind of missing. You know, there's like
Yeah,
this
for
part of me
sure.
that's just like I loved like being in the middle of like a random city or like a random place, just like at a coffee store reading, or just like I loved the idea of just being
Yeah,
somewhere new and learning from and like a new culture. And there's just something so special about that. Like nothing really can replace that
yeah,
feeling,
I
that
completely agree.
experience, you know?
Yeah. And it's not even necessarily about, I think it's just breaking the day-to-day
You actually feel like you're living.
experience.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you're not in this like pattern. Like I feel like so much of I'm like super grateful and happy for where like
Yeah,
what's
of
happening in
course.
my
Yeah.
life I am, but like there is this element of it's Monday before I know it, it's Friday before I know it, it's the end of the day before I know it. It's like I'm problem solving and I'm doing different things every day to some extent. But it does feel like you're sort of on this autopilot where life is just
Hmm.
accelerating. And what's amazing about travel is like if you could travel and unplug from Zoom, it's like
Yeah.
it breaks you feel like, oh wait, I'm like I have to use my brain to like take in my surroundings, and
Yeah.
it's different, right? It feels like time slows down just a little bit,
Yeah.
which is nice.
100%. I think you can find it locally, right? I think it's a
How do you
matter
do
of,
that? Like
not maybe not local. I still think you have to get in a car or plane and go somewhere.
I think
When
it
I
helps a
guess
lot
I guess when I say local, I mean uh in the US.
stateside. Yeah.
Still,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I hear you. Yeah.
Which big country, but my favorite trip I've done of all time that I've done twice, like been super lucky to have done twice now, was I did a Colorado River trip through the Grand Canyon,
Oh, that's awesome.
and I really yearn for these really wilderness focused trips because I've done a few kind of river trips where you're completely disconnected. There's zero cell service for 14 up to 14 days for some of these trips, and there's no hope. There's no hope of even having service. So when there's no hope of it, you truly are off the grid.
Yeah.
And gosh, it's such a perspective driving experience to just be off the grid in nature. No one can contact you, and it's like, oh wow, my mind is so much more clear. My thoughts are so much more open. The level of importance I add to things in my day to day that are just made up. It's made up urgency and it's made up
Yeah.
importance because I think we're stuck in this pressure of ambition and professionalism and comparing to others, and there's nothing like going off the grid to anchor yourself to where makes the most sense to find that balance of what you want to achieve professionally long term and the type of person you want to be long term, and how
Yeah.
and like hopefully reconcile that through some sort of balance that makes sense.
Right. It's like taking a step back to like remind yourself, okay, like what are my values, and
Yeah.
like is how I'm living my life really aligned with that?
Yeah.
And kind of because sometimes it's easy to sort of get off course a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like
There
because
is
life
always a
just
money
happens.
problem though.
Yeah, the whole money thing
Yeah,
is really
the
like
what it's
unfortunate.
so
Like it's like,
annoying.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
it's
like
just such
God,
the
it's
most
all
annoying part of
right.
the
This
whole
adulting.
equation.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
God. It's like constantly adulting these days. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
bullshit. Like, just kidding.
If only we didn't need money to buy things to stay alive, then yes.
Right. Yeah. It's like life would be so much better.
Yeah.
Um, so and then I'd love to talk to you a little bit about just where you are today, and let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk
Yeah,
about
sure.
talent
Let's do it.
acquisition
Yeah.
and right now you're kind of because you're in a director of recruiting role at Method, which it sounds like Method is growing insanely fast. Just quick like lay of the land, like how many employees do you
Yeah.
have? How much are you scaling, like headcount wise? Like what's that look like?
Yeah. I think we're growing traditionally fast. I think nothing compares to the AI
Well,
native
right, yeah,
company
like the anomaly, right?
that can scale, super duper fast, faster than ever. I think we're following a more tradition like a 2020 or 2019 fast growth.
It's still fast.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's still fast, still crazy,
Yeah.
but we're approaching 60 now. I joined about a year and a half ago, around 20. I'm leading talent. My background's mostly tech recruiting. I'm responsible for that, but also just kind of the whole like functional strategy right now. Sorry, I missed the question though.
Yeah, just no, that's good just to get a sense
Yeah,
like for where you're at. But like
yeah,
yeah, just like the size of the company, that kind of thing. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess I just want to talk to you about like, you've been in recruiting, I think you said about a decade. Is that right?
Maybe a little bit less, but
Close
it
enough-ish. Yeah.
prior to that in a sales role. So I kind of equate the two as
Right.
call it 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah,
So, like at this point in your career, I just want to get a sense for your top kind of takeaways or what you've really learned about TA and what you feel like is
Yeah.
ultimately the most important. I think one thing that stood out to me is you're like you talked about how in a way recruiting's like remained really consistent in terms of the things that you
Hmm.
have to do to be successful. It's more of like how we do it that's changed. But
Hmm.
could you tell us more about that? Like just, because that was a really interesting, I don't know, realization that you shared with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I started on the agency side, and the agency side in the end was not for me for a number of reasons, but
Hmm.
I think what it taught me and is still true to this day is truly the fundamentals of an end-to-end search. Now, I prefer the in-house version of it where you're selling one thing, and so, oh, my light turned out. So, I'll get to that in a bit. But I think, you know, for all the in-house people listening, the function has not changed, right? It's still a sales funnel. It is still, you have to source or you have to get people in the top of the funnel. You have to evaluate them throughout a process and you have to sell them throughout the same process. So you're finding that balance of sell versus evaluate. And then you have to make the hire, you have to make the offer. And that nothing about the mechanics has really changed, in my opinion, in the last decade. The thing that has changed is how we approach each of those stages in an end-to-end search. So sourcing nowadays, I've always worked at earlier stage companies. I've never worked at a company where we have this huge recognizable brand. WeWork is a bit of an exception at the time, but it was a subsidiary, so not
Yeah,
exactly the
managed by
same.
Q is like becoming
Yeah,
well known, I guess,
it,
but
yeah,
not
becoming
not
well.
like we were. Yeah.
I've never worked at over beyond a Series C, and where it's like, oh, we are. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. So we are this big, recognizable, cool company that pays well. So our inbound channel is super hot, right? Never had that. So for me, it's always been how do we build a sourcing machine, or how do we present this as a great place to work? How do we reach out to people? And so that's changed a lot, right? I think,
Yeah.
and some of the stuff of what I'm focused on in 2026 is around that part of it, and especially with all the tools that we have nowadays, how do we design a thoughtful process that both evaluates and sells? I don't think that's changed that much either. I think there are some fundamentals of like what evaluation should look like, and how to make an unbiased, consistent, fair, reliable, scalable process. Lots of buzzwords, but I think all those buzzwords are true. I think what has changed is the selling throughout, and how do we, there's more, we can unpack that a bit more. So yeah, I hate to say it's like easy. It's super hard. I mean, hiring is super hard, especially now. It's like as hard as it's been in a few years, in my opinion. But the if you can
Fundamentals
break
are,
it, if you can
yeah,
if you can break it down to the fundamentals exactly, then it's there is a straightforwardness to recruiting that I think is just a matter of executing well at each stage of that end-to-end process.
for sure. And so like right now, based on what you're doing in your career and that method, like what problems or opportunities are you currently solving for right now?
Yeah, I think it's a big sigh because I'm solving for so many different problems right now.
Talk about like
There's a
embedding some automations or like not even to
Yeah,
some extent, then but you also talked about some of the most important things you're doing are like not really possible to automate, right? Because like we
yeah,
are in like this people business and
yeah,
we can't do it too much. But I mean, just like looking at ways again, like changing how we do certain things.
yeah,
It's like the same high level principles, right? But
yeah,
like what are those types of things that you're kind of evaluating right now that you're looking at changing?
yeah. There's a boring answer here, right? And it's like, how can we leverage AI to improve our life, work, blah blah blah, whatever. It's like it's so buzzy at this point that it's like almost it's a given, right? But if we start with a thesis, right? The thesis being, how do we talk to the best candidates? How do we get the best candidates for method interested and sold and joining method? I My thesis is we need to be spending as much time targeting and talking to those folks because I believe that we have a great team here. We have a great value prop. And if people get to know us, then they're going to be really excited by what we're up to and who we are. But getting them is really hard. So what I'm trying to do, or getting in front of them, I should say, is what's really hard. So what I'm trying to do is use these new tools to automate away as much operational overhead as possible so that me and my team, or my team and I, are spending less time pressing a bunch of buttons in ATSs and emails and calendar invites and coordinating and etc. And you building as much AI optimization into that piece as possible so that we can spend more time talking to great candidates
Is
and
is
getting
there
more. Yeah,
is
go
there
ahead.
any specific case study or tool or use case that within AI for recruiting that stands out to you or you feel like is most impactful?
I mean, I'm ripping tons of Claude code, or I should say, really Cowork lately. We have it connected to all of the other tools that people have. Like we have it, we have it connected to Slack, Granola, Calendar, and Gmail.
Hmm.
So, for example, um, instead of, I used to update everyone whenever I scheduled an on-site or an interview with specific teams, right? I can create a co-work automation that once that calendar invite hits the schedule, it automatically sends a Slack to everybody that is relevant. It sends the LinkedIn to the candidate. That used to take me like 2 or 3 minutes to like copy paste the LinkedIn, blah, 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 whatever, put it
Hmm.
into a Slack, be very thoughtful. And it's like, oh, that 3 minutes times 15 to 20 interviews a week just compounds over time, and I can do that for my whole team. And there's so many automations that look like that. We My CEO sends a weekly update email, for example.
Yeah, you were telling me about this. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's for the internal team. It's a lot of confidential information, but it's really great content to send to a candidate that's later stage because it says, hey, you get a sense of how the CEO communicates. You get a sense of what's going on in the business. So it would be really high value for that to be part of our fundamental process to share with candidates at certain points in their candidate journey.
Yeah.
It's a ton of overhead to send that to make that decision. And it's a lot of redacting and it's a lot of buttons you have to click in order to do that consistently. So I created a cowork automation that once a week it scrapes to see if there was an email from the CEO. It automatically redacts confidential information. It creates a draft to all the candidates that I've set some parameters that identifies as late stage. It makes sure it hasn't sent it to them before or sent this version or a previous version before. And it drafts me a forwarded email to all those candidates. And all I have to do is QA it and make sure it's going to the right people, and
Hmm.
I could send it. So I've now embedded a very consistent white glove candidate experience and highly transparent business update email to them. And I've done it at scale for my whole team. And I've saved hours of work. And now we have this great content piece embedded in our process. So there's so many examples of things you can automate now
Yeah.
that allow us to spend more time doing what we want to do, which is talking about method, selling to great candidates, getting in front of great candidates, or just opening up our bandwidth to do a bunch of other cool stuff.
Yeah, that's really cool. What do you think about AI interviewing? Like screening top of funnel for inbounds,
Um, I think I imagine that there's places that make sense. I think it's personally, if you're a 50-person company trying to present a high value prop and a white glove experience, I don't think there's any room for that for a company our size. If you're running a super high volume new grad program, great. Like, sure, I get it. How do you, if you have a really strong inbound channel, like, great, go for it.
right? Like a ton of
Um,
like a lot of like a ton of inbound
yeah, but
applications
it's like
or
we
too much
spend
for the
most of our
recruiting
time
team.
sourcing.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, totally. And we do get lots of inbound as well. I think inbound's a very weird channel in 2026 where it's
for
like
sure.
there's a lot of noise, a lot of fake profiles, to the point where, 2 years ago I would have said it's a totally slept on channel. And now I'm like, ugh, I'm not really spending much time going through inbound because it's very noisy. So it's kind of a sad reality. I used to be a big champion of inbound
But yeah,
compared
that's
to
why it's
many,
like
like there was a bias for it. I've
yeah,
seen
for
biases
sure.
against it. Yeah.
That's why I like the AI interviewer like use
Yeah.
case because there's just like from a time investment perspective,
Yeah.
like just like the outbound motion is just like I think from like it's more strategic in nature too, and I still feel like yeah, AI can help like with outbounding too, but like having there's this a senior recruiter like being able to like craft a personalized message or really understand the
Yeah.
market to understand like where the best engineers work or like what I mean there's just like so there's like a lot more nuance to it.
Yeah.
Um, but I really like what you were saying in terms of like kind of creating your own automation, leveraging AI and like using it for down funnel to kind of craft like draft like that's a really cool use case. I feel like that's like somewhat unique too. Like,
Yeah.
because I don't really
You,
know companies doing
yeah,
that. So it's just like a cool thing that you can do to stand out, right? Like just
exactly.
it's
And
creative
that's what the
too.
name, yeah, that's what the name of
Yeah.
the game is right now, right? Is there's there's so many great companies right now. There's so many cool companies doing cool
Yeah,
things,
that's true.
and they're that are all competing for a first mover advantage. And I think my theory, I don't know if this is right, is one of the reasons this market feels kind of like 2021, I think it was, where it was like these crazy offers, everyone going to big tech companies,
Yeah.
like no zero applicants, is that there's just such a high distribution of cool, well-backed companies doing cool things. So there's just more opportunity now than there was a while ago.
Yeah.
And so all these great folks are getting picked up by all these companies that, these just new companies that didn't exist before. There's just it seems like there's just an explosion of more businesses.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the new challenge, but um so exactly what you said before, how do you stand out like that?
Yeah, and I think there's like unique ways to do it. I think like
Yeah,
it's people tune into shows like this or they're looking up content. It's like what's the best practice? What's the best practice? And like
yeah,
yeah, there are things that we can be doing to like okay, like looking at others, but there's also like this element of not copy pasting and like what just being creative, like what you're doing. And some of it would almost makes it like best practice level of in terms of effectiveness is that other people aren't
right,
doing it because you were creative and you're doing it. It's almost like partially more valuable because other people aren't doing it. So it's like
right,
we want to
right.
do like I think it's also like a balancing act. Like we there's a lot of things we want to do that other people are doing, but I also feel like sometimes what makes something great in terms of an experience is that other people are not doing it.
Yeah.
Like yeah, does that I don't know. It's just
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that I'm
totally.
kind of thinking through
It's
like
just
towards
standing.
like
It's yeah,
yeah,
yeah, for sure. We look at our peers, and of course, there's like companies we really look up to from what they're doing on an employer branding level, and
sure,
we
yeah.
yeah,
But
we're
a lot
gonna
of people are
copy
doing
them.
like the same stuff though. Like
Yeah, no, totally, and
yeah.
we're gonna copy that because it's
Yeah, yeah,
if we're not
copy the goods. You should
if
still
we're
do
not if
it.
we're not doing that, we're just falling behind, right? But
Right, yeah,
like the modernness of these tools that we have are opening up bandwidth to be creative in talent,
yeah,
right? So how do we use that, again, time being our ultimate asset? How do we unlock our time to be better than when we were stuck with this operational debt and overhead?
right,
Um, and for us, for me, for the thesis for 2026, it's leaning into content, leaning into in person, leaning into events. I'm not an event planner. I don't know what the hell I'm doing with events, but
yeah,
we're just doing it. And like, there's this mantra going around. I think it's you can just do things. Like you really can just do things. It's and of course you have to get the budget and the investment from your leadership to allow yourself to like, go forward. But we're just taking shots, man. And like we'll figure it out, and we've hosted great events lately. We're investing more in in-person stuff. We're investing more in content. And literally last night was up on a Replit account, spinning up a what is method animation deck that I could send to candidates.
yeah,
It's like more clear than any video content that we could have done that takes, 3 months to produce. We did this like way super simple MVP that took me a couple hours. And now I have like a deck I can send to candidates to unpack what it is that we actually do. And I can put that in my drip campaign outreach or whatever that I'm doing at the top of the funnel.
that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like we talked about TA, kind of your top takeaways, a little bit about what you're focusing on now, but just to zoom out a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more, this and I think this kind of meshes between professional and personal too. Is like more
Mm-hmm.
like life principle based.
Sure.
Um, you talked about like intention, like how you kind of interact with people and thinking through intention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can you, like what? So what do you mean by that when you say like you focus on intention and how you interact with folks?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it transcends the professional and personal life too, which is I default to assuming positive intent. Something that's always drawn me to earlier stage companies is there's no illusion that or there's no illusion that we're rowing in the same direction, right? When you're this small, there's no conflict of interest between business units or whatever that are at odds. Maybe at worst there's some scrabble for limited resources or budget or whatever. But I've
Sure.
never really seen that our company our size. So we can all, from a baseline, agree that we are aiming to achieve the same goal, and any disagreement in between is we are at least we are, it is a disagreement of opinion about achieving the same outcome, which I love that. That's what draws me here because if there's no room to assume anything other than positive intent. But and it kind of extends into my personal life, which is I'm very much about intention versus outcome. So I'm like an incredibly way to a fault, way too much of a trusting person. My wife like complains, gives a shit about this all the time. She's like, but like I don't know, I feel like I would hand someone money on the street and be like, hey, can you hold this for a sec while I grab this coffee? Like I just trust people. I don't know. And I've trusted many people with things that end up biting me in the butt, but it's not because they didn't intend for it's not like sorry, I'm not making any sense.
Yeah, no, you are
For
actually.
example,
I totally get it. It's like it's
for
yeah.
example, like I've lent my car to people and they ended up getting in a car accident. And it's like that or they were fine, but like the car is totaled or whatever. It's like that's fine. Like I you didn't intend for that to happen. That's I'm not even mad. It's just that's just a bummer. That's just a fact of life that accidents happen. But if you intended to ruin my car, we'd have a huge problem, right?
Right.
So when you have that attitude, I think it opens up a lot of room for kindness, for trust, and I'd much rather live a trusting life and have a couple of times where it burns me than to be skeptical of everyone around me, right? And I think the travel stuff has a lot to do with that. But I
Yeah.
think the learning from the travel stuff is that there is room to be trusting and focus on intentions more than outcomes. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. And there's lots of applications to it, but that's the high level.
What's interesting is you're saying that it's like moving forward, like assuming positive intent opens up like your ability to when you think about like different virtues or principles like being kind or right being honest or being trusting like all of these things are kind of like because of assuming good intent and enables you to makes you feel like okay I can live more so by this
Yeah.
code. um
Well, I just think I've seen the opposite too, right? Where due to your life experience, you are skeptical of others, and those folks certainly have many reasons to feel that way. But I think it just is. I think it's a limiting presence in someone's life to be so wary that it's a life of fear or it's an attitude of fear. And I'd rather just have I'd rather not live a life of being afraid of what someone might do and just take it at face value of what they end up doing, whatever that might be.
yeah, you also mentioned that like the ultimate value for you is kindness. I'm wondering
Hmm.
like how that made it to the top for you. Why is that so important?
Yeah. There's this book called, I think it's called Road to Character by David Brooks. I think this is a played out trope, so this might be familiar to lots of people listening, but it's just this concept of living for your eulogy and not for your resume. And, the book's all about these beacons of character throughout history and what makes their character particularly um, robust or strong or whatever. And I think if I am living for my eulogy instead of my resume, then I would want to be looked back as someone who was kind,
Yeah.
ultimately. And I have a 9-month old now. I think of the values I would rank for what I would want my daughter to turn out to be like, I think more than smart or ambitious or whatever, I think I would just hope that she's nice and kind to people. And so if that's my hope for, my kid, I think it's important that I rank it for myself as well and embody that value as much as I can.
That's really smart because that is something that I've thought about. I just like you articulated it, like it made it more clear for me. It's like, yeah, we should be living our lives in the way of like what we want for our children. Like,
Hmm.
and it's not just, and it's also like being able to lead by example. It's like showing them the way because ultimately they're not going to just model what we say, but they're going to model how we act and the way we are, which is also
Exactly.
what's
Yeah.
terrifying. At times,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you're like, oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of my, it's similar vein. Like one of my work principles is just never lose your cool.
Yeah.
Uh, and that I don't lose my cool at home. I mean, it takes a lot for me to lose my cool, but having I wouldn't say I'm the most patient person. So those are two things that are at odds with each other is like
Yeah.
not losing your cool and not being patient in my personal life. It's like, okay, how do I reconcile these two? But
Yeah.
I hope I can figure out the way to remain kind and maybe
Yeah.
be a bit
Patience
more
is
patient.
huge.
Yeah.
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 Patience and like understanding and like kindness and all those types of things. Yeah. Because like
Yeah.
being a parent is like it will test you.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it tests us in those.
She, my
Yeah.
daughter's great. Father, I think it was nothing that's tested my patience has really ever been about her specifically. It's just about the 0 to 6 month age.
Oh
My
yeah.
God, that tests her patience. It's like not her fault. She's just a kid. She's a
No. No.
baby.
Yeah.
Like
It's
this
not
is what
about the
babies
kid.
do.
It's like
Yeah,
yeah.
this is
It
just wow. That was certainly patience. As would be tested. It would be yeah. That's just
it
for
tests
anybody.
you.
It has to be. Yeah,
Yeah. It's incredibly challenging.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I like want to get into a little bit more about your future and what you want and how you're thinking about getting there. Like professionally, you've talked to me a lot about like before we hit record about like
yeah.
building something special, building
Hmm.
something meaningful. Like, and again, I think it goes along the line of like you say, kind of living for kind of like from the
Hmm.
perspective of thinking through like a eulogy versus like a resume.
Yeah,
Kind of being able to reflect back and feeling like really good about what you've done. So it sounds like there's some parallels there when you think about like what you want to build for the future. But yeah, I mean, I guess like let me get to a question here.
yeah, yeah,
It's like when you think about like building something special and that being at like the core of your professional goals, could you tell us a little
yeah,
bit more about what you mean there?
yeah. I think when it relates as it relates to talent, there's a bit of a paradox in talent or a conflict of interest that happens, right? Which is your mandate is to build a team, and implicit to that mandate is there's a number to hit, really. And you have to fill a certain number of seats. And I think the conflict of interest is in order for your performance to be deemed good, you need to make the hire. And so that can make you advocate for a mismatch. And because your performance is tied to the speed and
Yeah, like you
quality
have
at
to
which
move. Like,
you have to build
yep.
the company, right? But I would want to be more longer term thinking than that. And my North Star in talent for method and for any future company I join is how do we build a thing so that when we look back on it, this was the absolute best group of people I've ever worked with. And answer for every hire we make, answering that question fundamentally of is this a hire that's going to embody that vision? Now, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of gray space in between that. Sometimes you really just need a person really fast to solve a business problem that's critical. And if that's going to help the business get to that point faster, that's a trade-off, that is going to still align with that long-term vision. But ultimately, how do we maintain this uncompromising commitment to our bar, whatever bar means? It's a very sticky term that can transcend in lots of areas. But how do we maintain this uncompromising commitment to whatever we call the bar to for that ultimate goal of looking back on this super fondly one day and looking back and saying, wow, what we built there was really special.
Yeah.
So that's the TA vision, right? Um, so yeah, sorry, that's the
No, that's yeah,
yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
So, um, Colin, one of the things you mentioned to me is that resilience is just a core value and something that you think about at this point in your life. And could you share with us why that is?
Yeah, I think, maybe it's a matter of circumstance rather than a value that I top down decided on. But I mentioned, I think I mentioned my dad was born in the apartment that I grew up in, and he actually passed away when I was 16. And when formative years in high school, your dad dies, it's like, one of the funny stories about it is I never told anybody at high school. I just kind of powered through it because I was like wanted to like keep on this facade of being like this isn't going to be the thing that defines me. I don't know why I did that. I talked to my therapist about it, but it's just kind of a straight. It was kind of the natural thing that I felt was like the right decision to do at the time. But really difficult. timing in my life, right? My dad passed away in 2008. My mom lost her business in 2009. It turns out that fine linens are the first thing that people stop buying during a global financial crisis. So I think it developed this period of time in life where I was kind of doing my thing and like a little bit on my own, where my mom was wrapping up her business, was very tied up in that. Um, and so, that was just ultimately like my first foray into training for living a very independent, self-driven life of running into specific problems, whatever those might be, and relying on myself to try to solve them, right? She had her business to take care of.
For other folks that when you're going through
Yeah.
tough times or when you're thinking about like, you know, persevering during challenging times in a startup or like as a parent, like what do you
Yeah.
think? What did that teach you about how to get through those tough situations or chapters? Like how do
Yeah.
you approach it?
I think there's an aspect of this that's there's no one else but you who can do this, right? You have like this is your responsibility. There's nothing you can do to make it not your responsibility. And this is a very extreme type of forcing function in order to do it. But there is for any difficult task ahead of you, you typically know in your gut that who the right person to tackle that is. And it's very frequently you. And I think this life experience for me taught me to you just have to white knuckle it and do it sometimes. I think one of my mentors in my previous job, really impressive woman who was our chief people officer at my last company, but one of her mantras was just do the thing. And I think having had this life experience, which is again an extreme version of it, in order to is a very was very strong endorsement of just doing the thing, where you run into I had to grow up pretty fast, right? I had to learn how to do my parents' taxes. I had to do all of the house maintenance and like become a pretty handy person. I had to deal with like all sorts of paperwork that I've never run into before. And I'm doing this as a minor or, just in 18 to 20 years old. The second half to this story is that my mom ended up developing Alzheimer's. So, that's been the last eight or so years of her having that disease, which is particularly shitty one to get. And it's just been more of that for my late 20s, right? Of dealing with these um, very trying circumstances, but nonetheless high resiliency building experiences to just learn how to do things and be independent and to tackle them head on.
And like what about just like more holistically too? Like what type of person do you want to become and what are you going to be focusing on in this next chapter over the next several years?
Yeah, I think refine the craft, for sure. Even though where I claim that it's straightforward, there's a lot of gray space in between all the areas of the template of which talent can go end to end, right? So refine the craft, flex into areas that I'm uncomfortable with, like events and in-person stuff. Um, and then maybe one day just get off the rat race, whatever that means. I think I want to be
Yeah,
real,
that'd be awesome.
what keeps me here is I'm loving building. Uh, I am super proud of the impact that talent can make. We made a couple of really critical hires end of last year, and it's like I can see how the business has meaningfully moved forward as a result of that work.
That's awesome.
So
Nice.
to see, seeing the impact is still very fun and very cool, and I'm still very proud of the impact that talent has on businesses, especially at this stage. Long term, I see, as long as that continues to be true, I see myself sticking with it, and maybe maybe the next phase is this goes from, a 60-person company to a 600-person company. It's a very different type of problem. And maybe that still scratches the itch, and I hope it does. If it doesn't, and I'm like, I want to live in the Grand Canyon and be a nomad, like I have a whole other spreadsheet for my Renaissance life that doesn't involve a full-time tech job, uh, which we can certainly unpack. But that's but yeah, I do wonder if I'll one day leave the corporate world and run a lifestyle business like a coffee shop or something.
Yeah, that would be really
Yeah,
cool. Thought about that
yeah,
too.
yeah,
It's awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
Well, hey, Colin, we're running up on time here. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you and like your just like top takeaways with with life and talent and all these good things. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show and joining us today.
Yeah, James, I really appreciate the invite and being on. It's I'm not used to talking about myself, so I try not to as much as I can. So it's but I had a great time.
Yeah, yeah, me too. It's just like really cool learning about like sailing and like your travel
Yeah,
stories are like
yeah.
really, really unique. So
Yeah.
well, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.